Thank you for joining us for CBN Newswatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, Israel keeping up its assault on Hamas in Gaza, attempting to destroy the remaining group and to recover the remaining hostages. It comes as the supreme leader of Iran once again says Israel must be destroyed. An Israeli intelligence officer who spent decades studying Palestinian culture explains how Israel missed warning signs leading up to October 7th. President Donald Trump making a 2-hour phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, trying to set up peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. But critics warn Putin isn't serious. And how mothers are going online and turning to social media to get some advice on dealing with the stress of parenting. All those stories and more right now on CBN Newswatch.
This is CBN Newswatch.
Tuesday, May 20th, going to begin this half hour in the Middle East, where Israeli strikes pounded Gaza overnight and into today, after launching another major offensive in the territory in recent days, called Operation Gideon's Chariots. Israel says it aims to return dozens of hostages held by Hamas and to destroy the terrorist group. Thousands evacuated Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip on Monday after the Israeli military issued a warning urging residents to leave the area. Israel over the weekend launched a new wave of air and ground operations across Gaza, all of that coming after Iran's supreme leader once again called for the destruction of Israel over the weekend, saying it was a source of war. And it is, quote, lethal, dangerous, cancerous tumor that should be eradicated and definitely will be. Our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell joined us now with more on what's happening. So, Chris, we'll talk more about Iran in just a moment. But first, what are the challenges facing Israel's Operation Gideon's Chariots, this new assault on Hamas?
Ephraim, one of the biggest challenges facing Gideon's Chariots is actually moving the population of Gaza and removing them as human shields that Hamas has been using ever since the beginning of the war. What they're trying to do is have these humanitarian areas where people can go to get safety and humanitarian aid. And we know just a few days ago on Sunday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu began sending in aid back into Gaza. The reason for the stoppage was that they wanted to keep the Hamas from stealing the food. Actually, in the Gideon's Chariots is actually now 5 divisions of reservists and soldiers inside Gaza, hundreds of airstrikes. And as we've talked about before, Ephraim, the goal is to control all of Gaza. They call it clear and control, squeeze Hamas, put the pressure to release all of the hostages, and then and hopefully end the war.
Israel has been facing criticism from the United Kingdom, Canada, and France. What is Israel's reaction to that?
Well, first of all, what happened, the UK, France, and Canada, they issued a statement on Monday. They were condemning Israel's handling of the humanitarian aid inside Gaza. They also demanded a Palestinian state. And so Netanyahu reacted. He said the state, a Palestinian state, would be a prize for what was a genocidal attack on October 7th. He reiterated what happened on October 7th, that it was a defensive war. Hamas murdered 1,200 innocent people and abducted over 250. He says, Netanyahu, that is, the war could end tomorrow if the hostages were released and Hamas surrenders, and then have their leaders exiled, and then Gaza demilitarized. He says no nation could be expected to accept anything less. He calls it a war of civilization over barbarism, and these was the reaction to these 3 nations. Also, Gideon Sa'ar, the foreign minister of Israel, said Israel's fighting for its very existence, and it won't accept any dictates from outside with regard to Israel's national security.
Chris, what is the outlook on talks on the hostages?
Well, right now we know the latest is that there's been a 2-month ceasefire, and now we have the Gideon's Chariots resumed. Qatar's prime minister has said that there's a fundamental difference between the 2 sides. He says the talks are stalled. What Israel is demanding is the release of all the hostages, Hamas to disarm or surrender, and that Hamas can't rule Gaza. Hamas demands on the other side will be the end of the war and Israel pulls out all of its troops, and then Hamas would survive. Right now, Qatar's blaming Israel because of the new offensive, but also Israel's getting pressure from the White House. President Trump, according to its spokesman, would like to see, wants to see an end to the conflict. On the other hand, U.S. envoy Adam Boehler, he says Hamas is the main force holding back a deal.
You mentioned in your report that Iran's supreme leader has called for the destruction of Israel once again. What's Israel's reaction?
Well, I think this is the typical rhetoric by Khamenei that's been going on for years. They call for death to Israel, death to the United States. They also said that Trump was using U.S. power to bring a massacre in Gaza and dropping bombs on children and waging wars anyway. They called for the destruction of Israel as well, the Zionist entity. Sometimes they don't even use the word Israel, calling it a source of corruption, a cancerous tumor that would be eradicated, and it would be. So behind all this is their motivation for a nuclear weapon. And many people here in Israel say, when they say these things, you need to believe them when they clearly tell you what their agenda is. This all comes just a day after President Trump's Middle East visit. But on the other hand, they say they'll continue the nuclear talks despite this harsh rhetoric by Khamenei. And on the other hand, President Trump has repeatedly vowed Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, as he said last week, that all action would be taken to stop Tehran's program.
So much to cover. What do you have for us this evening on Jerusalem Dateline?
Well, another update of what's happening here in the Middle East. We also have a roundtable on both Trump's visit to the Middle East, what impact it has here in the region. Also, we discussed the impact of Yuval Raphael, I should say. We talked about that yesterday. She is the Israeli singer who came in second in the Eurovision Song Contest. It's really had a dramatic, positive impact here in Israel. We also have analysis with Dan Diker. He's an expert, Middle East expert here in Israel, and also an interview with Sandra Hagee and bringing up to date what's happening with Christians United for Israel, known as CUFI. Many people I think there's about 10 million members there. An interview with Sandra as well.
All right. Thank you so much. Our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell. Always appreciate your insights, and naturally, we're looking forward to talking with you more in the days ahead. I want to remind you at home that you can see the latest from Jerusalem Dateline at 8 p.m. Eastern on the CBN News Channel. You can also watch it on the CBN News app and find it on YouTube as well. Here at home, after a 2-hour phone call with Russia's President Putin on Monday, President Trump says he believes Vladimir Putin is ready to make peace with Ukraine. He suggests the Vatican might be willing to host the peace process, but not everyone believes that Putin is sincere. Wendy Griffith is on this story.
President Trump says Russia and Ukraine will immediately start negotiations toward a ceasefire and an end to the 3-year-long war. He described his 2-hour phone call with Putin Monday.
I said, when are we going to end this, Vladimir? I've known him for a long time now. I said, when are we going to end this bloodshed, this bloodbath? It's a bloodbath. And I do believe he wants to end it.
The president also told reporters the Vatican expressed interest in hosting the negotiations.
I think it would be great to have it at the Vatican. There's tremendous bitterness, anger, and I think maybe that could help some of that anger.
Putin said the discussion was very informative and very frank, stressing Russia and Ukraine need to find compromises that would suit all sides. But there are doubts about Putin's sincerity. Brad Bowman of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies told CBN's Faith Nation Monday,
"It seems to me that the former KGB Colonel Vladimir Putin is continuing to do what he does best, and that is be duplicitous and deceitful and to drag things out and extract as many concessions as possible. And until this administration, the Trump administration, starts to impose serious consequences, additional consequences on Putin, I think we're going to see more of the same from the Kremlin."
President Trump said he's ready to back away if the two sides can't reach an agreement, calling it a European situation that should have remained a European situation. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Coming up, how an Israeli IDF soldier got a first-hand look at Arab culture. He reveals what Israel doesn't understand about Palestinians and how it directly led to the terrorist attacks on October 7th. We're going to hear from him when we come back. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. Avi Shalev spent decades studying Palestinian culture as an intelligence officer in the Israeli military. He also became the only Jewish student to graduate from an Arab Islamic college. His unique experience led him to some eye-opening conclusions as to why Israel missed warning signs leading up to October 7th. Here again is Chris Mitchell with that story from Jerusalem.
For 24 years in Israel's military intelligence, Lieutenant Colonel Avi Shalev closely observed the daily life of Palestinian society. After retiring, Shalev continued his education by enrolling in an Arab Islamic college.
I learned how much I don't know about our neighbors.
Shalev wrote about the experience in a diary which he published as the only Jew in the room.
I was their first Jewish student ever to have registered to this college.
Shalev says this is in stark contrast with Arab Israelis.
Thousands of Arab Israelis study in Israeli universities in Hebrew.
His time there helped Shalev conclude that while Israel's intelligence agency had plenty of high-tech information, they lacked understanding.
When you come to assess your neighbors, okay, you need a lot of intel, but you also have to understand and assess this intel. And if you don't understand the mentality, the culture, the language, the religion, the narrative, the history of your neighbors, you'll find it very difficult to actually understand the intelligence that you have.
He believes Israel completely misread Hamas.
We know today that the IDF had the plan of 7th of October. It got many warning signs, and it misread them. And you know, the head of intelligence, Khalifa, said that even if somebody had told him on the 6th of October that this is going to happen, he says, I would have dismissed him.
Shalev says instead of hiding its intent, Hamas broadcasted it on Palestinian television.
2 years prior to the attack, Hamas published a TV series
called The Fist of the Free. It was viewed by millions of Arabs.
And on the 30th episode is the 7th of October. It's the attack on Israel. May 2022, Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas, saying this is exactly what we are going to do, and we're going to realize everything that you saw on this TV series in reality.
The program portrayed Palestinians working with Israelis as traitors.
Anybody who's invested doing business and having relations with Jews is a real villain.
And yet, Israel continued to increase work permits for Gazans, hoping jobs and money would result in peace. Instead of gratitude, Shalev says, Hamas showed contempt.
We hate doing business with the Jews. We hate being related to them. We hate sending our kids to their hospitals.
Before October 7th, 17,000 work permits had been issued to Gazans to work in Israel. Shalev says Israel's intelligence never dreamed the workers would want to jeopardize this opportunity.
They would never go and sacrifice everything they have because that doesn't make sense in our world. But Palestinians in Gaza, especially Hamas, was not thinking like that. It had a vision. It was thinking in religious, Islamic narratives.
Terrorists then targeted those Israelis most committed to making peace with Arabs.
Hamas attacked the most left-wing, liberal, progressive communities on the border who really went out of their way to assist Gazans.
He sees the heart of this failure being a cultural collision.
Israel is a far more modern society, individualistic society, where the locus of control is internal. So we internalize, we in our mind, we think that we can change the world and we can be effective. The Arab is a very traditional, religious, Islamic, tribal society. They take their clue from the group. They're not analyzing the situation, so it doesn't really matter for them if it's true or false. If the context is favorable for the group, they're with it, and they're completely identified with the group policy or idea.
Shalev warns that unless Israel can bridge this cultural chasm, it will remain vulnerable.
I think following the 7th of October, Israel will change, especially in the military and the intelligence community, the way it trains its cadets, its officers, because we really need to understand Arabs better, understand the way they're thinking and they're seeing us.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Still ahead, here at home, mothers turning to social media to tap down their rising anxiety over parenting. We're going to show you how mom influencers are coming to the rescue right after this. Studies show that mothers are struggling with increased anxiety today. Part of the problem is the pressure from social media to measure up to other moms. Yet social media is also part of the solution. CBN's Jenna Browder spoke with 3 influential women whose podcasts are helping mothers with the challenges of parenting.
The joys of parenting, there are many. But today, maybe more than ever, parents are dealing with anxiety. And it's especially true for moms. A study by the Urban Institute finds that 13.5% of mothers struggle with moderate or severe anxiety.
It's because we're conscientious. It's because we want to do a good job.
That's where these women can help. Christian influencers speaking into this space.
Whatever we pay the most attention to is what we're reinforcing.
Many of you might know Sissy Goff, co-host of the popular podcast Raising Boys and Girls, and longtime counselor at Daystar Counseling Ministries.
In 31 years of counseling kids and families, I've never seen mothers feel as stressed, as much pressure, even feel like they're failing their kids. Part of that is the pressure that comes from social media and from watching all these people telling you as a mom how you're supposed to do it. And really, if there's anything I want moms to hear in my office, it would be, you know your kids better than anybody else. And I want you to trust your gut and trust that the Holy Spirit is speaking to you in that gut in terms of what your kids need the most.
She also just came out with this children's book, Lucy Learns to Be Brave, which addresses anxiety in kids.
The overarching theme of that book is that Lucy, my little dog who practiced with me at Daystar for 15 years, really discovered that she was brave and that she had this special gift. She waved at people on command. And that she discovered that gift when she learned to trust how much I loved her. And so kind of the premise behind that for kids is the more we can learn to trust in God's love for us and their parents' love for them, I think the more they feel like they are courageous and can step out and do these brave things. And we're wanting them to get that as early as we can.
Anxiety in moms is something Erin Mayshaw and Birds on a Wire Moms is tackling too.
So we just had our annual conference last month, and it was themed Peace for the Anxious Mom, because I think that there's an anxious mom in all of us. There's something about becoming a mom that just makes can just make us fearful, and worried about all the things that can go wrong, or you hear other stories of things that are happening.
Birds on a Wire Moms puts a big emphasis on a mother's relationship with Jesus.
We do want to give practical advice. At the end of the day, what's most helpful when my kids are going through something really hard isn't a mom hack. What's most helpful in that moment is my relationship with Jesus. And so I think that what Birds on a Wire has really strived to do is yes, we want to give practical advice, but we also just want to equip moms to be able to grow in their faith and to know how to pass on that faith and help their kids build a foundation of faith for themselves.
Wire Talk is the name of their podcast. Birds on a Wire Moms also offers devotionals and prayer journals and an annual conference.
So the series was born out of a poem that I wrote for my kids.
Abby Wedgeworth is another Christian influencer known for her popular children's book series, Training Young Hearts.
And it was just celebrating all the amazing things that their hands can do. Also pointing to the fact that there are right and wrong ways to use their hands, and then equipping them to respond when they do use their hands in a way that God did not design them to be used. For example, hitting, pushing, snatching.
Her books point to Jesus as the perfect example and perfect savior.
I've heard from a lot of parents that if their kid hits a sibling, they'll run to get the hands book. Or if they bite, an older sibling will run to get the mouths book for their little sibling. But they really also provide a refrain for parents to say, did God make your mouth to bite? No, of course not. And then they can use their mouth to confess and to ask for help.
Abby has also written a book, Held, for women dealing with pregnancy loss. And out of that spun her podcast with the same name. She tells me she just submitted a manuscript for another book, Help, I'm Ruining My Kids.
And when I share that title with women, they either get tears in their eyes, or a lot of times it leads to a deeper conversation of them just sharing ways they feel like they're ruining their kids. And so lately I've found myself sharing the message a lot with moms that nothing that you do is beyond redemption. Not your own heart or actions or your effect on your kids. Like, God is at work and you are a work in progress.
And that's a message for all moms. Your kids are growing, and so are you. And there's a lot of grace along the way. Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Indeed, there is. We'll be right back with an encouraging word for your day. Stay with us. Time now for your Tuesday Tweetable. This is a message I hope you'll post, tag, tweet, and share with those in your circles of influence. You are God's answer to someone's prayer. Seek His guidance to be who He created you to be. You have purpose, but you will never tap into it without tapping into a relationship with your Creator. Get still, seek God, and be the answer to prayer He's called you to be. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel at any time, as well as online. That address is cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories we've shared today. You can do that by emailing us, newswatch@cbn.com. And, of course, you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. We'll see you tomorrow.